No mai, haere mai. Welcome to the Maxim Institute podcast. I'm Jason, the communications manager here at Maxim. Each week, we pair our latest column with an insightful conversation, taking you behind the scenes of our weekly columns and chatting with the authors to unpack the research, ideas, and discussions that shape their work. Get ready to dig into the latest topic. Today, we talk to Executive Director Tim Wilson about his recent column. Tim, welcome along to the podcast, mate. Good to have you with us.
Kia ora, Jason. Good to be here.
Now, we're talking about your column, Why Taylor Swift Lost the US Election. And I don't know, Tim, I'm pretty sure I was paying attention and she wasn't running. So can you explain this title to me? Like, what's this all about?
Well, the title, it's got your attention, right?
Yeah, that's right. Because I was like, what? She wasn't running? Yeah, I've got to see what this is all about. Yeah, exactly. So it did its job, I guess.
And that's what it's supposed to do. But there is a serious point here, which is that Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris in September. And there was this huge outpouring, a sort of a tsunami of headlines saying, you know, she could change the game. And there was sort of polls branded to support that. But as well, I mean, two things we're aware of. One is that polls aren't actual predictors of truth. They're sort of vague omens, not electoral polls. The other thing too is that there's this question of whether celebrities actually have an effect on the voting habits of their constituency, which it's about the Swifties. These are the Taylor's acolytes who, and I've seen this at my local school disco, is when Taylor's songs are on, they're all dancing.
Everyone's on the floor, right? Yeah.
Then another artist's beats come up and they just evacuate. It's like, no, we're not doing this. So there's a certain amount of loyalty there, but it didn't seem to play out electorally. And I think,
it's interesting because you pointed out. Yeah, she's like the biggest pop star in the world. Like, everyone knows who she is. Everyone all her fans adore her. She's known, like you say, for having the Swifties and those people who will defend her, you know, vociferously. Yet she wasn't able to, or at least it appears she wasn't able to sway the election in the favor of the candidate she endorsed. Why do you think that is? Like, is it that we just don't expect celebrities to give us political advice because they're not pundits, or is it? What do you think it is?
I don't think it's one of the KPIs we actually want from celebrity, so to speak. And University of North Carolina did a study of this in 2010, so a while back. But they found that young people don't like being told who to vote for by famous people. They actually think less of that candidate because of the recommendation, and they think less of the famous person. So that's where the title comes in. Like, Taylor Swift may actually have lost quite a bit of mana telling her supporters to vote for Kamala.
Because not only I guess young people don't really like being told anything by anyone, so that's not a surprise. But the fact that they don't
that's
like
not
the
true,
celebrity,
Jason. Your kids love it when you tell them what to do.
Yeah, that's right. Just like your boys, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Let's keep moving. Just talk.
Yeah, but the fact that they will like the celebrity less, like that, like you say, there's a lot of celebrities that jumped on the Kamala bandwagon. Number of movie stars. I think you mentioned George Clooney. There were people like Mark Hamill and Sean Astin, and they had this
Arnold
whole
Schwarzenegger,
conference.
Julia Roberts. Yeah. She did an ad, voiced an ad for Kamala.
Yeah. So then they've also sacrificed their own credibility on the altar of politics, which is fascinating. Do you have any idea or insight as to why it might be that actually we like them less when they tell us how to vote?
Yeah, again, it's not something that we want from celebrities. Look, Mike Hosking actually raised this I think it was the previous week, but he was talking about LeBron James's endorsement of Kamala. And he's like, I love how LeBron James plays basketball, but I'm just not going to listen to his advice on who to vote for. These are two distinct things. I think also there's something different. We're thinking about where these celebrities come from. Now, I think Taylor Swift's probably going to be okay. She was the largest or the biggest artist on Spotify last year, so she's got new media platforms pretty much sewn up. But a lot of these other celebrities that we're talking about are legacy media celebrities. So film stars, maybe people from TV, etc. And there's a bit of a legacy media pyramid where you've got movies at the top, TV, and to a lesser extent radio in the middle, and print at the bottom. And what was fascinating to me as I was researching the piece was the decline in TV audiences for this US election, in the sense that the audiences that watched this time, and this was pitched as an apocalyptic battle between good and evil.
We were talking about that last week, that it's like the most important election in a generation, if not history, because this is the future of democracy at stake. You know, there was a lot of tune in to see how the country's going to go for the next 1,000 years or whatever. Yeah. And I would just say as a note, when you hear that the future of democracy is at stake in regards of anything, I would just, check the footnote, because, we heard that a lot with some of the changes in the media landscape in New Zealand. And what's happened is that people are just migrating to different platforms. And that's certainly the case with TV in the US. So the viewership on election night was 1/4 less than 2020. And even more revealing, I think, and I'm going to give a bit more context for those numbers, even more revealing is the number of households who watched the US election, the lowest since 1960, 26.5 million. Now, you compare that with the 40, and we're not comparing apples and apples in some sense, but the Joe Rogan podcast that President Trump did, 3 hours with Joe Rogan, that got 47 million listens. Now, some of those people would listen twice, et cetera, but what you're clearly seeing is a migration from one platform to the digital space. And I wonder if those celebrities, what we saw with the failure of those celebrities to swing voters was the erosion of the platforms that they're on anyway, as well as this effect, we might call it the North Carolina effect, where celebrities actually lose mana by recommending political candidates. Well, I know that when we watched the election, all the way up to, I think, Trump's acceptance speech, we streamed it, but not on any of the mainstream news channels. I think it was on YouTube. We watched it on a channel on YouTube. So I think there's anecdotal evidence, at least, that most people, like you say, are migrating to these other platforms where they don't have to have a cable subscription or something like that. But with that, I mean, that's those numbers for Joe Rogan are huge. 47 million. I think that was just on YouTube, and obviously there's numbers on Spotify and other platforms as well that he'd be measuring. What does that mean then, do you think, for the future of the political landscape with this new media emerging?
Yeah, look, I think it's because platforms have different ways of telling stories. So, for example, print's a great way to deal with data. I would say radio is a great way to interrogate ideas. TV is more about how something feels and what it's like to be there. So each platform has its strength. You look at Joe Rogan, that was a 3-hour podcast. We're going to see more of, I think, politicians in future and the way they have their messages. They're going to have to be more discursive, i.e. able to talk for 3 hours and not seem too inconsistent. So political interviewers I know say that politicians' talking points tend to break down after 6 minutes. If you can hold up for 3 hours, you're doing pretty well. And I'm sure, look, knowing and observing Donald Trump as I do, I'm sure there were huge inconsistencies. But you're going to have to be able to be discursive, but also crystallizing. So in the sense that what are the What are the issues that the electorate cares about? And that's one thing I think that was a problem, quite aside from the celebrity endorsement for the Kamala Harris campaign, was that the economy wasn't addressed and illegal immigration wasn't really addressed by her. And those were the two issues that pollsters, and again, I sort of, crossed my fingers and toes about pollsters, but they said that these were issues Americans were concerned about.
So the sense that politicians will need to listen to the people to hear what's important to them, but then to crystallize, simplify, and kind of talk back to the people. Well, we've heard you. These are your issues. Here's our simple solution to it.
Yeah.
Come and vote for us.
Yeah, but also I think they'll have to be able to speak for 3 hours on something. So often you'll hear a politician speak and you'll think, there was a communications meeting with a whiteboard. That doesn't actually mean anything. There's just a collection of agreeable platitudes running around a landscape of general sentiment. And actually, politicians who are able to speak authentically and at length will have an advantage if you're looking at those kind of media like the Joe Rogan podcast. You've got to be able to speak for a long time. You've also got to be able to deliver sound bites. The game just got a bit harder.
It is, like, hearing you say that, I go, that's a tight rope to walk. It's a tight kind of border to run, that you have to be able to talk long form, but then in that provide things that can be chopped up for reels and TikToks and sound bites and evening news, vox pops and things like that. So maybe then this was an epoch-defining election in some ways, Tim.
I think it was, and that's the fascination with political events like this, and for tragics like you and I that actually are engaged with this kind of thing. It's not, but it's going to be. It may not be the change that you expect in the area you expect, but something is definitely happening.
There's something in the air, as we might say. Well, Tim, lots to think about and lots to look forward to. I think our election is coming up in a couple of years, and I wonder how this will impact messaging of our own political parties as we go into that. But thanks for being with us and sharing your thoughts with us today.
Always a pleasure. Ka kite. Undoubtedly the biggest star in music today, Taylor Swift consistently sells out arenas, dominates the charts, and inspires a generation of young acolytes called Swifties. The latter are particularly loyal. Or is that tribal? I write as a parent reporting from the local school disco. When Swift's music plays, they dance. Another artist's beats drop, the dance floor is evacuated. Given this cachet, when Taylor Swift endorsed Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris in September, headlines ensued. Sample: how Taylor Swift's endorsement of Harris could change the election endgame. Close quote. Supportive polls were duly brandished. Of course, we've since been comprehensively reminded that polls are merely vague omens, not irrefutable truths. Now, Tay-Tay, as she's known, wasn't the first celebrity to weigh in. Months before, Hollywood hunk George Clooney wrote an op-ed for the New York Times saying that Biden should go. Biden did. Cue a new candidate and a glittering mist of stars collecting around the vice president, including Julia Roberts and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So when Kamala Harris lost so comprehensively, the rout wasn't hers alone. Taylor Swift sacrifices some mana, but more on that later. Hollywood also stumbled, along with the belief that celebrities can sway elections, plus a few business models. Movie stars, in some sense, are products of the legacy media pyramid, with movies at the top, television, and to a lesser extent radio in the middle, and print at the bottom. How telling then that the election's US TV ratings were terrible. Actually, disastrous, considering that the plebiscite was pitched as an apocalyptic battle. Nielsen reports that TV ratings were down 26% on the 2020 election. In terms of households watching, the number was the lowest since 1960. Yes, 1960. Such numbers are reflected in the job cuts impending at TVNZ currently. Free-to-air broadcast TV is losing viewers. Fewer people watch Hollywood movies at the cinema too. Some might say the irony here is that the victor, Trump, is also a celebrity. And while he's famed for visceral politicking, colourful, often inaccurate speech, and thin-skinned narcissism, he knows the landscape is changing and has built his celebrity brand on just that. Consider Trump's 3-hour stint on the Joe Rogan podcast. Exit interviews from polling stations in Arizona suggest the swing of young male voters to Trump was influenced by this appearance. That podcast, by the way, has 47 million listens on YouTube and climbing. That's almost double the number of households who watch the election on telly in the US. Some of this supports a US study of celebrity political endorsements from 2010. Young people don't like famous people telling them how to vote. They also think less of the candidate who's being spruiked and the celebrity doing the sell. Despite Swift's efforts, Harris won fewer 18 to 29-year-olds than Biden did. The celebrity effect in politics and how political messages are disseminated has forever changed, and they're never, ever getting back together.
Thanks for tuning in to the Maxim Institute podcast. If you want to stay updated on our latest research and insights into New Zealand politics and policy, sign up for our monthly forum email and event invites on our website. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. From the team at Maxim, mā te wā. Goodbye for now.